as classical guitarists, we're very lucky that the guitar's tuning is almost exactly the same as the tuning of a Renaissance lute, meaning that it's mostly tuned in what are called fourths. The interval from one string to the next is a perfect fourth. So the E to A is a perfect fourth, A to D is a perfect fourth, D to G, perfect fourth. Then there's one major third, G to B is a major third, and then B to E is another perfect fourth. On the lute, it's the same, but the major third is between the fourth and the third strings. So all you have to do is tune down the third string so that there's a perfect fourth between the second and the third strings. So basically you're tuning the G string to F sharp. Like so. And once you've done that, you have the nominal tuning of a lute. And what's so cool about this is now we can read from historical tablature, which I strongly recommend you learn. In my recent interview with Nigel North, one of the most famous, legendary figures in the lute world, we talk about exactly that. You can find the link to this in the description, the full interview. But it's such a great skill to have, and you can read directly from the tablature. In fact, I have another video where I teach you how to do just that, reading historical lute tablature on your classical guitar. So when you're playing Renaissance lute music, the other thing to consider is that the common music we're playing is often written for a lute in G. So the standard thing to do is to tune your third string to F sharp, and then also capo the third fret. Again, be mindful of all those rules I talked about. Find that parallel placement, not at an angle, not too far to the left, and not on top of the fret. And then once you're capoed, you have to make sure nothing's buzzing. Another tip is that sometimes when you capo, you might hear the following. Do you hear that buzz? It's like this rattling sound. Sometimes on certain guitars, you'll find that you get this back buzz, which is happening behind the capo for some reason on this note. I don't know exactly why, but on certain guitars and certain frets, you'll hear it. So one trick, if you're having this problem, is you can take a ribbon or some type of material and you just tie it around the neck to just kind of mute the strings a little bit. You can make a nice little pretty bow here. And what this will do is in a recording session or a concert, you can eliminate the buzz. And now you can play lute music. Now this is where most guitarists stop, but there's actually more information to know about playing lute music on the guitar. Lutes came in various sizes, and there was no such thing as a standard pitch in the Renaissance period. So the idea that the third fret capo is more correct than playing with the open strings, or second fret, first fret, it doesn't really make sense, because lutes were in relative pitches. You just tuned the lute to the pitch that made sense for that lute and those strings. There were lutes in G, A, D, E, basically whatever pitch you wanted. So one way to think about playing Renaissance music on the guitar would be to tune the third string down a half step still, but then just play the guitar as it naturally is. It's sort of a lute in E, which was not a weird thing. Beautiful. The open strings have a wonderful resonance that when you capo, you don't quite get the same sound, I think. Funny enough, there's also this trend I've noticed online recently. In the last 5 years or so, I've noticed that every person who plays Renaissance lute music on the classical guitar seems to capo on the second fret. And I think this comes from a big misconception. There's this idea of 415 hertz, which is a half step lower than modern pitch. So modern pitch is A440. So this is a 440A, and there's an idea of tuning down a half step, 415, which is what this guitar is in right now, by the way. This is 415 pitch, but it doesn't actually make sense to apply this to Renaissance music, because in the Renaissance, there were a number of different pitches, but 415 wasn't by any means a standard pitch. In fact, this is much later. This is in Bach's period, Johann Sebastian Bach, who lived in Germany. His pitch, we think it was 415, but this has nothing to do with lute music pre-1600, for example. So there's nothing more correct about capoing on the second fret versus the third fret. And lastly, I just want to say that if one wants to capo, I think the reason could be that a higher capo on the 3rd fret or even the 5th fret, because there are lutes in A as well, gives you a very bright, high sound, which can be quite beautiful. So up in that beautiful high range, you have a different timbre, a different affect, and open would sound like this. Beautiful in its own right, different versions. So you decide what pitch do you like. But I think when it comes to playing Renaissance lute music, that the 3rd string down a half step in F sharp is absolutely essential because you can read right from the tablature. So that's it for today's video. Go forth and use your capo wisely. If you enjoyed today's free guitar tip, please do subscribe to my channel. It really does help. I also have a Patreon where I have like 23 other tips that I've already uploaded there. If you want more guitar tips that aren't here on YouTube, you can go to Patreon, become a patron, and you'll get access to tons of perks like early viewing on all my videos, behind the scenes content of what I'm doing, updates, and guitar tips. I also have lots of educational material online. I have a music school with teachers who could teach you on Zoom weekly. These are expert teachers that I trust. These are colleagues and friends of mine. Taking weekly lessons is the absolute fastest way to progress on guitar. And lastly, I have 2 online courses. These are self-paced courses that you can take at home. One is Classical Guitar Pro, which teaches you from the absolute beginning to your first guitar recital. And then there's No Nail Guitar in 10 Days, which is a course where I teach you how to play classical guitar without nails on your right hand. So thanks for watching, and until next time, take care.